On today's episode of the Boss Juice podcast, we have Bruce Reed, the founder of Bruster's Ice Cream. Bruce, you're a successful entrepreneur. You could have started any business. Why ice cream?
Well, I think we should go back before that.
Okay.
And talk about real estate, because really that's where I'd made my money. When I was 17, I was thrown out of high school, and I was working at Chippewa Exxon Station, making $84 a week, which was good money. Because back then you go to Ohio and get gas for $27.9. Pack of cigarettes was 35 cents. I'd eat at my dad's restaurant for free. So I was really able to save a lot of money. When I got thrown out, my dad's best friend, it was one of these no money down real estate deal guy. And I had saved up $2,700, and I wanted to buy a Corvette. Back then, a brand new Corvette was $6,200. And he says, okay, he was a car dealer also. So he goes, hop in the car. We drive down to New Brighton. I go, no, I want to go to Beryl Chevrolet in Wexford. And he's like, no. We pulled up a 611 4th Avenue, Brighton. It was a 3-story home. He's already talked to your dad and mom. They'll co-sign for you. You got to buy this. We're turning it into 3 apartments. We get $225 for the first floor, $175 for the second, and $125 for the third. And my payment, I borrowed $8,900. Payment was $105.36. So it was real simple. I was netting over $250 a month.
Yeah.
And back then, school teachers make like $7,500 a year. So I thought, man, if I had 10 of these, I'd make like $25,000, $30,000 a year. So I went back to work, started trying to save some more. Well, at the same time, my dad talked me into coming down to Jerry's, because Jerry's was never open for lunch. It used to open like at 4 o'clock. So I went down, opened for lunch, and after about 4 months, my dad was not a very good businessman. If you had a uniform, you eat for free. I don't care, fire department, state police, local police, Rochester, New Brighton, all of them. He just gave everything away. So one night I had a conversation with him, and my dad never raised his voice at me, not one time in his life. And I just said, it's you or me. And he says, well, your mother and I don't have much money saved. You'd have to support us. I said, fine. So I took over the restaurant 4 months before I turned 18. And it wasn't me. It was just fast food was starting to really, this is 52 years ago. And fast food was really starting to come on. And Jerry's just kept getting busier and busier and busier. And I kept buying real estate. And then the first house I bought, the guy that showed me how to do that, he sold it. And I made $17,000.
Wow.
Now, when you're 18 years old, to make $17,000, that was a lot of money. But banks were different back then. I got to the point where I would just go to the bank. I'd borrow $20,000 for a 6-month note, buy a house for $12,000, fix it up, get a mortgage for $20,000, pay the note back off, 100% finance. So by the time I was, I think, 22, I had 88 properties. And then I started buying strip centers and apartment complexes, things like that. And then in 79, we had hyperinflation, and everything tripled. So I sold out of a lot of the property. And at age 28, I bought a cattle ranch and got married and retired. And then at age 35, 7 years later, my sister went through a divorce. And her husband quit his job, so she wasn't getting paid. So I was giving her $300 a week. And she said, after a couple of months, I really want to do something. And she wanted to do ice cream. So we were looking at T-Square yogurt, and it wasn't, I just didn't like the product. My father was always, he never talked about profit and loss at Jerry's. He talked about, is the hamburger fresh, is the cheese real, or the buns toasted? And he was a stickler on quality. So I was telling a friend about that, and he said, I know this lady makes ice cream in an alley out in Youngstown. It's the best. People wait in line out in the snow. I went out and took one taste of the ice cream, set the dish down, and made a deal, teach me how to make ice cream. Well, I owned the property on the other side of Jerry's, so I took that little corner and opened the first ice cream store. And my goal was to, back then we charged 94 cents a cone and 6 cents tax. So it was $1. And my goal was to pay my sister $300 a week. And I think I borrowed $200,000 to build the place. Well, we did $605,000 first year at dollar ice cream cones. It made $250,000 profit.
Wow.
This is 35 years ago. I mean, it was fun. I mean, kids wanted to work there. You could teach a 16-year-old that never worked there in her life in 2 hours of scooping ice cream and serving customers. And it's such a good environment. And typically the employee that works there didn't want to work at Burger King. So I started opening one a year. And then once I had the fifth one, I'll never forget, I thought, I just couldn't get managers to care. Like I'm wiping off chocolate off the floor and stuff like that. And so I thought, and everyone was calling wanting a franchise. I'm thinking, how you get people to care is you get their money in the game. Well, looking back, I didn't know how to treat managers, and that was the problem. But we started franchising. I went very slow. I did 4 the first year, 4 the second year, and then I went ahead and started franchising more. And I think about 10 years, I built 100 of them. And I was on the YMCA board. And in fact, Skip Homan, that was CEO of Michael Baker Corporation, and Kevin McCarl from Carl's Heating, they said, you should go to Harvard Business School. I go, I don't even have a high school diploma. They go, no, there's a 3-year course, you just pay. So I went to Harvard Business School, and when I came out of there, I learned that I wasn't the guy to run the company, so I needed to hire a CEO. So I'm a lucky guy, and my luck, Mrs. Fields Cookie bought out T-Square Yogurt, and they got rid of all the upper management. And so the president of the company, Jim Sahene, I hired him 21 years ago. And at the time, I think I only had 5 or 6 employees here in the office. And they're telling me, in fact, they're all out there now still. They're telling me, you'll never let anyone run the company. You'll never. And within 12 days, I walked out and never been back.
Really?
Yeah. There's a saying, hire people smarter than you.
Yeah.
And I did that.
Let me back up a couple steps here. So the people that are listening and watching us on the Boss Juice podcast, they don't know probably any of the background with Jerry's and I got a couple questions. So I'd like you to talk a little bit about Jerry's, because that's an iconic sort of restaurant. I don't even want to call it a restaurant. It's way different vibe. And then I'd like to learn a little bit about maybe the things that you learned in that world that transferred over into ice cream. But tell our listeners a little bit about Jerry's, what that was all about, because it's really cool.
My dad opened Jerry's. He got out of the Air Force in 1947, and the first Jerry's he built was $800. I mean, it was a piece of crap. And he just kept working and working. It really never made much money, because what he made in the summer, he'd lose in the winter. But he was a nice guy. He owed everyone money, and they didn't, force him to pay that much. But like I said, when I got involved, it wasn't me. It was just a matter of fast food was really taking off. I mean, I think there was only a McDonald's in Beaver Falls.
Yeah, that had to be one of the first in the area.
And, I only worked there about 2 years, and then I started getting into the bar business. So I bought a bar over in Rochester and Stubby's in Ambridge when I was 20 years old. You could still own a bar in Pennsylvania at 18 years old, but you need a manager that's 21. But anyways, getting back to Jerry's, it was just, quality product, fresh homemade fries.
What was like today's Sonic, really? Yep. I mean, it's the curb service. It was the people that came out. This was before my time, though, but I heard that even on roller skates, things like that. Is that how that was at one point?
No, it was never roller skates.
Okay.
But I tell people Jerry's is a Sonic with good food.
Yeah.
And Bruster's is a Dairy Queen with better ice cream.
Right.
Stand-up service, stuff like that. But the part of Jerry's going over into Bruster's is just the quality. I mean, it's a shame as you get bigger, like we used to buy Amish apple dumplings. And, I mean, I'd pick them up in the morning. They were hot. They were unbelievable. And we got about 8,000 of them a week, and the Amish are just like, we can't make any more.
Seriously.
Same with, we used to make the fresh black raspberry. Yeah. We'd sell 1,000 black raspberry cones a day. And I used to try to get the Boy Scouts to pick them. And, we were like wiping everyone out of black raspberries. Today we have to buy them frozen.
Yeah.
So, with your father, with Jerry's curbside service, how did he, you had said he wasn't a great businessman, but he was really focused on the quality of food. So, what lessons did you learn from him? Because at a young age, it seems like you started, real estate, you tried a bunch of different things.
I was really lucky. I had mentors. When I was 12, Sherm Hoster, he was an auctioneer. He was my mentor. And then when I was 16, the owner of the gas station was my my mentor. He was a strong businessman. I mean, you owed him $1, he came out, he'd pull you out of the car for the $1. But my dad was never like that. Then I had Skip Homan from Michael Baker Corporation, Del Gettiger from Vesuvius McDaniel, became mentors. And I was just really lucky. You just learn different things from different them. But my father, he was just a super nice guy. Never raised his voice to my sister ever in his life. And when he retired at 47 years old, he built a recording studio over in New Brighton, and did like Donnie Iris and the Granati Brothers and things like that. He was a real giver.
I never made that connection. Jerry Records
Yeah.
was part of this whole package.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's interesting. So I spent some time on the website checking different things out, and you've got different videos on there. And I saw the video on the website where there's a spill of some ice cream on one of the tables, and somebody wipes that up, and there's a spill on the floor, and somebody wipes that up. But it talks about the term, the magic behind that kept coming up, kept surfacing in the video. Is there any significance behind that? It was talking about franchising and ownership, and it was the mentoring side. It's how you build people.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a super important piece that's part of the give back. And that's kind of what puts a certain thumbprint on a business. Can you talk about that a little bit?
I mean, I think the biggest key in running multiple businesses is when you hire somebody, they want to be good. They don't want to be bad, mm-hmm. but you have to allow them to make mistakes. Like I used to always tell my franchisees when I hired a manager, like, how many mistakes did you make? Oh, I made 1,000. Well, you have to allow them to make 1,000. Mm-hmm. Like my CEO of 21 years, his personality is completely different than mine. So he can't be me and I'm not him. So you can't hire a CEO and then the founder show up 7 days a week. You have to allow him to run the business the way he wants to run it. And he's more of a manager type. Mm-hmm. He's, planning and, it's just the strategic planning he does, and the management and the budgeting. I never had a budget, mm-hmm. I never had a plan. My plan was just open as many stores as we could.
So that handing over the reins, so to speak, from your baby, was that a hard thing to do for you?
It wasn't. It really wasn't. I just know that, we needed an organization, mm-hmm. and someone. I'm the type of guy who's going to sit in the office 40 hours a week and run a company. Mm-hmm. So it was just time for me to leave. Best thing I ever did.
Yeah.
Do you still have any? Obviously, you have some say in kind of things, but
I really don't get involved. I approve the product, and I'll give you, for instance, drive-through windows. I just never liked drive-through windows in the ice cream business, and we're building new Brusters right down here now with double drive-through. I mean, it's some areas 70% of our sales mm-hmm. are from the drive-through. So he tries a lot of things. Like when I was running the company, I didn't want to try anything. We're not going to sell anything but ice cream, and we've tried hot dogs and we've tried coffee and espresso and stuff like that. But he really lets people do things. The other thing about Bruster's too that was because of my real estate background, when I started, I wanted the people to own the real estate, and I'd become obsessed with federal income tax. And so I wanted it to be a tax shelter. So these buildings that were prefabricated, you got all your money back in depreciation in 7 years. And there were several years, like I think 03 and 04 and 11 and 12, you got 100% depreciation. So when you build a Bruster's, you get like $160,000 back that year in your income tax. Wow. So it was a real estate investment, it was a tax shelter, and it was a business. And we even are doing that today. We're spending as much as $2.5 million per store. And I've always told people, after that mortgage is gone in 15 years, ice cream, no one can compete with you because they still have rent to pay. And the rent keeps going up and up and up.
That's super interesting because that's, speaking of franchises, like that's completely different than the McDonald's model, for example, where McDonald's owns the real estate and those franchisees, they're paying that rent in perpetuity. I mean, I almost feel like you attract a better type of owner in your sense, because now when they have ownership and they can plan ahead, they, like you said, once that mortgage is paid off, the sky's the limit. I mean, it's straight profit at that point.
Well, I always said, you'll never make money making money unless you're Michael Jordan or Madonna. But people think, cash flow. Cash flow, they call it that because it comes and goes. Mm-hmm. You typically get rich through equity in real estate and trying to focus on keeping the taxes instead of paying them. The person, if you ask a person what they make today, they go, I make $100,000 a year. No, you don't. Mm-hmm. You're lucky to make 50, because after federal, state, local, sales tax on gas, or gas tax, sales tax, real estate tax, you're back to half what you make. So when I used to do the seminars, I used to ask the people, as a family, what's your biggest expense? We go around the room and they go, well, I have a kid in college, or I have a mortgage payment on the house, or whatever. No one ever in 10 years said, oh, my federal income tax. I'd bring that up and they go, they were looking at an ice cream business and not realizing they're getting a real estate investment in a tax shelter.
So I'm a marketing and branding guy, and I think that besides product quality, because I've eaten the ice cream for years, obviously, but I look at the brand, the identity, the color palette, the story behind the business, and everything like that. That's where I think that you guys have done an outstanding job building that brand, that identity, and all the things that go with that, along with from loyalty programs like the perks and the rewards and things like that. Were you the brains behind the marketing and the sales? Because seriously, when you were talking about like your age, the youth, and the business savvy that you had early on, the mistakes that you made that you learned, you bought property really quickly. You wanted that Corvette, but instead you invested in a rental unit basically, and kind of built on top of that. But so sales, marketing is the thing that drives sales. So I think that's got to be a little bit about how you're wired. Were you part of that marketing?
I'm just really wired that you have to create something that people talk about. Yeah. And when people come to Bruster's and eat the ice cream, they just go crazy. I mean, and everyone always just talked about it. We went, when we opened a store in Marietta, Georgia, is our first store, or second store. I'll never forget, I kept telling the owner, he said, what should I do? I said, just go to Mr. Mobley in the morning. It was a radio show, biggest radio show. And it was right in his town. I said, just drop off a dozen pints of our ice cream. Don't ask for nothing. And a year went by, and he never did that. And I hired an operations person down there. And she said, hey, Bruce, anything you want me to do? I said, yeah, go to Rick's store, go get a dozen pints of ice cream, and go to Mr. Mobley in the morning. Don't ask for nothing, just drop it off. She dropped it off there. No, wait. Come on. She was on the show for 20 minutes. You know what that costs,
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was just, we used to have promotions like bring your own banana. We still do on Thursdays.
Pajama day.
Pajama day. And just, again, just creating a lot of talk about it. The first time we had Pajama Day in Bridgewater, I think we had 800 people show up. We were on the 11 o'clock news, the 6 o'clock news the next day. I quit fresh fries at Jerry's one time, thinking they're a pain to cook them twice, 1,000 pounds a day. And I told one of my employees, it's not like they can go everywhere and get fresh French fries. So we'll switch to frozen. We were in the front page of the newspaper 2 nights in a row. Our sales went 50% down over the French fries.
Well, that back on the marketing branding side of it, your story, the logo. I know the logo identity changed a little bit over the years, but not much. That same color palette, that bright, vibrant red. And then I've had the Bruster's ice cream in Erie and South Carolina and local places here. It's the same thumbprint. It's the same look, feel, style that you would come to expect every time. And I can tell that you have somebody develop some sort of training package, because all of the people that serve you at Bruster's there's a way about them. I mean, they dress a certain way and everything like that, but there's like an attitude. And maybe it's happy because they're around ice cream and sweets and things like that. I don't know, but there is something special about it.
What's funny is our franchise that comes to buy, they're not looking at any other franchise. They like the ice cream. And their number one motive, they don't go, wow, I can make a lot of money. But their number one motive is, I really like this ice cream. I want to bring it back to my hometown. Then we attract the employee that's not going to work anywhere else. I mean, I've had celebrities, daughters come to work for us. We've had 16-year-olds show up in a 550 Mercedes to work, for minimum wage.
Right.
And it's a great place for your first-time job. You go home, you smell like vanilla, not a cheeseburger. And in fact, one of the biggest compliments we ever got was, it was Richmond, Virginia. The owner called me. He says, "You're not going to believe this. We have a dozen of our employees that every Friday they wear their Bruster's shirt to school." Now, no one caught dead in a McDonald's uniform in high school,
Right.
but we just attract that. It's a fun business, I mean, people come happy, and they leave really happy. Like at Jerry's, they come hungry, and if you mess anything up, man, they're mad.
So when people were looking at the business from a franchise standpoint, did you ever have to get into the conversation with people to almost like discourage them? What I mean by that, let me explain real quick. So eating ice cream versus being on the other side of the counter serving it, those are two different worlds. And a lot of people say, hey, they go to a sports bar and they're saying, hey, man, we're going to get a bar. My friends and I, we're going to.
Yeah.
There's so much other stuff that goes into the business ownership side that they don't know about. How did you coach people or encourage them? Because you said you gave presentations, things like that. Tell us a little bit about that. That's pretty cool.
Well, yeah, I mean, we used to do about a 4-hour seminar when I was involved. Today, what they do, though, it's really, really cool that they'll do a Zoom meeting with the CEO. This is after the lead people already, qualified them. Then they have a day where they all come in. It's called Meet the Team, one day a month. And I think this month there's probably 8 or 9 people coming. And mostly it's couples. And they meet the whole team. They'll do a little presentation in marketing. They'll do in project management and operations and product. They'll tour the facility. And then my CEO and his wife cooks them dinner at my home. And that experience you don't get anywhere. And I would say in the last 24 months, 98% of the people that came bought a franchise. Because they have that, you really get to know someone when they're in your home.
Right. Did you ever look at people and go, man, I know they're going to do really well? Or you just maybe shake your head and say,
oh, we tell a lot of
I
people,
don't know.
no.
Yeah.
I think one of the worst things you can do is when daddy wants to buy his kid's business, and it's not what the kids really want, But no, we have a lot of people. Like, very few come, and there's like, how much money are we going to make? It's a really unique situation.
Yeah.
And even in regards to marketing, we sold, 200 stores before we ever marketed the franchise. It's just, they kept calling. And even in the beginning, they hated to hear, like, I'm only selling 4. And I already sold 4, first 4 people. And next year, they try to buy their way to the top of the list. Yeah, I think the first 12 people I talked to in 3 years, everyone bought. But like I said, it's a fun, clean business, and people were happy.
Do you have any requirements on someone who purchases a franchise? Like, so for example, I've heard that Chick-fil-A, if you purchase the franchise, they actually require you to work as like the director or manager of that location. Do you have any sort of requirements like that?
We don't. They have really strict. Same with Culver Custards. Same thing. I think you have to be owner operator. Gotcha. I know Chick-fil-A now, there's people on more than one. But same thing with us. We're having a lot more multi-unit operators, because when you build these big stores in great locations, you can afford to pay a manager a lot of money to run them. So I know our guy in Phoenix has opened his 4th one right now. Guy in Houston's got his 3rd one. We have a guy that used to be our salesperson that when 2008 hit, no one was buying franchises, no banks were loaning money. So he ended up buying a franchise of ours. And today he has 5 stores, and then he has, I think, 8 in the Mercedes-Benz stadium in Atlanta.
Oh, no way.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
So I bought 2 Harley-Davidsons at McMahon's in Beaver Falls. And I know that with like a Harley-Davidson dealership, there's a certain level of, just the look, feel, maintenance, everything about these businesses. Do you police any of that from a franchising standpoint to make sure that it's held up to the standards?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we have probably 5 operation people throughout the country that visit stores, every day.
Yeah.
The other thing, too, it's funny in a franchise system, you got maybe a third of the people that don't need anything. Mm-hmm. You got a third that, they like to see you once in a while. You have a third that won't listen anyway, so.
It's true. You learn as you go.
That's interesting. Are you guys have any plans to target any new markets with franchising?
We're really doing a lot of stores. We've opened a dozen in L.A., California.
Okay.
We've got another dozen or so there. Phoenix, Texas. We're just all over.
And how does that work? So, do you generally, speaking, let the franchisees choose where they want to have the location, or are you guys more so involved in?
Oh, no, we're really involved. We identify an area for them where they can look. And then once they find a piece of property, we have a gentleman will fly in and approve it or not approve it. And then take it. It's a long production today. I started on our new Brewsters here in November. We probably won't actually break ground until September. Okay. Just with permits and PennDOT and all the issues you have. So it takes almost a year to open one right now. Very timely.
What's the percentage of franchise owners that own multiple Brewster's locations?
I don't know what that is. Everyone wants to come in and they want 3 or 4.
Okay.
But we like to see them operate one. Mm-hmm. And what's unique to the franchise, and I love this part, is you can have 3 stores doing the exact same gross amount, and they're making 3 different bottom lines. Or you can have a bad operator in town, and you sell it, and the new operator becomes in the top 10. Same location,
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, it really is. And opposite happens. You have a very successful store, maybe number 1 store in your system, and they sell it. It goes down to maybe 150 on the system. But again, that's what's really nice about a franchise system. You get to see all the different things.
Right. Well, the other cool things I think that you guys have added, I know locally, and tell me if this is in other areas too. You've got the Brewster's truck, that can be rented for parties and receptions and things like that. And I think those are a lot of fun. They're all branded, they're all wrapped and everything like that. Is that just unique to this area, or are they all over?
Yeah, we love. I used to manufacture food trucks for about 7 years, because when I started buying the trailers, there was a company, and every time I go out there in Indiana, I'd walk in, I see a chicken truck, a pizza truck. I wanted to just buy them, So one day I just said, "Hey, why don't you let me buy half this company?" He goes, "Sure." And we bought half, and real quality builder, and no, we have them everywhere.
So how many businesses, you just said you purchased part of that business. How many businesses do you own or have you started? Because, I don't know if people realize it's a lot more than Brewster's.
Yeah. Well, I own a third of the dairy, Titusville, and we produce a lot of, we do 8-10 million just in cottage cheese a year there.
Wow.
And we do sour cream, French onion dips, iced tea. I have 2 partners there, but we were in the food truck business. I've been in the bar business, restaurant business. Franchised Jerry's in the Carolinas, did 2 stores, complete failure. It's really funny when you don't have brand recognition in the South. You can have the best steakhouse in the world. No one's heard about it. They don't stop. Yeah. And that's where we were lucky with Brewster's, because everybody talked about it. When we opened up Brewster's, we would go to beauty salons and drop off 6-7 pints, because because those, salons, they're cutting people's hair and they're talking about the ice cream all day. Hey, have you ever been over to Bruster's? So that was a good marketing.
I was just going to say, that is like outstanding marketing strategy. It's the simplest thing.
Yeah.
And it's a shame when you were telling the story earlier about, you asked that one person to drop off at the radio station and they didn't, and a new person comes in, you asked them to. Man, that's part of the magic, really. So simple.
Well, we were on, this was crazy, America's Got Talent. One of those with Katy Perry, Lionel Richie, and the other country western star. Anyways, in Alabama, one of the guys was in the finals, and they made an ice cream named after him. And they called us, the radio or the television station, said, "Is there any way you could bring the product to a show?" Are you kidding me? Yeah. Anyways, Katy Perry ran out and got it, and she come back, and they only had one spoon, and it was so funny. Lionel Richie took 2 tastes, and he looked at the audience. That is amazing. And then they were fighting over the spoon.
That's hilarious.
And Katy Perry said, I have a cold. Didn't want them to eat it. And we probably had 2 minutes on that show, which would have cost millions.
Yeah.
So we've done a lot of that stuff.
That's
a lot
awesome.
of
I did
fun.
not know that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
What's your, in your opinion, what's your biggest disaster as far as a business opportunity? Maybe you missed one, or maybe you're like, man, what was I thinking?
I tell you, man. Well, I had a hamburger store in Chippewa called Stubby's, and I would think I was 24 years old, and a kid went to college, and he was telling this guy at Penn State about me. So the guy called me and he said, "Hey, I'm looking for investors. Would you be interested in investing in my business?" I said, "Sure. What is it?" He goes, "Bottled water." I said, "You out of your mind? Who's going to buy bottled water? You get it free out of the tap." So missed that opportunity.
What company was that? If you don't mind saying.
I don't even know what it was now. That was a long time ago.
Yeah.
Wow. The batting cage business, I built 2 of them. One in Hopewell, one in Bridgewater. Disaster.
Why? That
Well,
batting, those cages that was really well done. What happened there?
You know what? You should. The lesson I learned: don't ever talk to the salesperson. Like if you want to buy a Bruster's, don't talk to our salespeople.
Yeah.
Talk to a franchisee that's been there for 10 years. And I'm talking to these batting cage people, and they're just like, "Oh man, you're gonna do this, you're gonna do that." And there's no, And so opened the first one, and it just took off. And so I started on the second one, and found out like after 7 weeks, your business is done. I mean, it will do fantastic, but you need to do business for maybe 5 months. So that was a disaster.
Those were state-of-the-art batting units, batting cages.
Yeah.
Wow.
Opened 2 Jerry's, one in Columbus, Georgia, and one in Spartanburg. Disaster. Yeah. What else?
Wonder why? Because you were the new kid in town. You weren't local. What was the deal?
There was no name recognition, and they didn't do. I don't think the one did $10,000 in a month.
Wow.
And, we've had Bruster's do $15,000 in a day. So.
But I'm sure you learned a lot from all those mistakes. Like what was the biggest lesson you learned from those mistakes? I've never really focused on that. I'm very lucky. I forget about things. I like to have the glasses full. So I'm like, boy, am I glad I didn't build 10 of them. Building 2 bad ones is bad, but you overcome it. Also, I had several Brewsters in Columbus, Ohio, and we're not real good at operating several stores, especially when they're 250 miles away. So that was a little bit of trouble there too. But no one ever talks about their losses. I was going to write a book one time about all my losses. But Did you wrote a book? You're planning?
No, I was thinking about writing one.
You should. I think
You'll probably be a loser though.
I'd read it. That's cool though. Yeah. So like, you've started and operated and been owner in multiple businesses. How do you manage that? Like, as someone who, I love entrepreneurship, and I have 1,000 ideas in my head. Sean always, jokes with me because like I'll stay up till like 3 a.m. because something's in my head, and I'm like, dude, I need to pursue this or like this and that. I'll start losing my mind. I'm sure you have a lot of ideas that come across your desk. How do you kind of filter out the bad ideas?
No, I first of all, I've never invested in a business to make money. I've always bought it because it was such quality, or like the food truck business. Mm-hmm. I didn't ask how much he made. I just loved the food trucks, man. They're just beautiful. There's a place in Nashville called Hattie B's Chicken. It's that hot oiled chicken. It's the best chicken I've ever had. I've been trying to buy that for 4 years, just because I just love the chicken. The dairy, I bought the dairy because it's 140 years old. And the way we make our mix, it's called bat pasteurization. Everyone switches over to high temp because it's cheaper. So we make our base mix the way they made it 140 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's why I bought that. I didn't buy it to make money. I tell people, if you really, really love what you're doing, that's what you need to do, not get into a business just because you think you can make money. Same thing as entrepreneurship. I really never felt I took a chance. Like I was always shocked when I lost money on something. Like the batting cage was that stupid. I never thought about the season being 7 weeks. Mm-hmm. But every piece of real estate, even though I've lost money in real estate deals, I never in my life thought I'd lose money. It just happens.
Early on, you said Skip Homan and others said, hey, about this Harvard business program that you went through. And you said, hey, I don't even have a high school diploma. I think that story is important for people because a lot of people think you automatically need to go to college. You need to do this. You don't need to do a lot of those things. And I think you're a testament to that. You can be the street smarts, I think, are as important, if not more so, than the book smarts.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. There's a saying, too, you're only as smart as the people you hang around. Yeah. And I was fortunate enough to hang around some people that really did well.
Yeah.
And it's the same as my children. Neither of my children went to college. And my son has a really big landscaping business in Atlanta that I did not help with one penny. He started on his own. And my daughter buys and sells jumping horses in Wellington, Florida. And I really never allowed them in the business. I didn't want my employees babysit my children.
Yeah.
So they haven't been involved. And they're still not involved, but it's getting close to where they're probably going to have to get involved because I'm not selling the business. I'm just going to, leave it in trust to them. But they're both just entrepreneurs.
That's good. So speaking of that, like if you're looking ahead the next 5 to 10 years, what are your plans for Bruster's or maybe some of your other entrepreneurial ventures?
Well, I'm trying not to get into anything else because, my daughter lives in Florida, my son lives in Atlanta, and they don't really want to come up. Although we are building where the Jerry's is now, we're building a Bruster's on the left side of it. I'm hoping to do a Dunkin' Donut where the old Bruster's is, and then build another new Jerry's with a paid parking lot also. And then I still have a big sliver of land at the end that I think we need a gas station, outside of Beaver, So I might do a gas station down there.
Hey, if you're looking to do a gas station somewhere, down where I live in the Strip District, that is my biggest complaint. There's no gas station to easily get there, so that might be a good spot to look.
Yeah. But I'm just doing it because I own the property.
Okay. Fair enough. That's cool, though.
Thanks.
It's interesting you mentioned about the kids, too, not being involved with the business, but just through life changes and things like that, at some point, they're going to be involved. I think that's interesting. And that's an opportunity. And it's funny because I know a lot of times people build a business or maybe their parents, and then you get involved, and it's that next generation. They're more interested in reaping the rewards. And it doesn't sound like in your particular case, that's been it. They've gone on successfully and done their own thing, which that's got to make you feel pretty good as a dad, for one thing.
Yeah. No, it's really, my son was in a little trouble when he was younger. So, with drugs and stuff like that. So when he got out and he got into, AAA, these guys that were in the tree business hired him to just bid jobs. And within 4 months, he started his own business, and I didn't give him a penny. And it was a blessing because, like I said earlier, when daddy buys the kids' businesses. But I think they'll be like me. I think they'll always have a CEO to run it. My CEO now, he's 64, but we plan on him being here for several more years. And a lot of the employees here, I mean, it's like a fine oiled machine.
Yeah.
Bruster's. The first 5 people I've ever hired are still here, except one passed away. I just saw Mark going by. He's been with me 27 years.
Nice. Wow.
So, and they still have a lot of years left.
Yeah. You mentioned about the circles, the people that you've been around that have helped, and I think that's maybe. So you and I, long time ago, I told you, like you said, hey, I think I recognize your name. We served on United Way boards and YMCA boards, and we did a lot of campaigning and things like that to help from a sort of philanthropic. It's kind of like your give back. And I think that's really important for people that have been established in business to share not only that important wealth and knowledge that sits on top of your shoulders, but also these connections that you have. What could you tell a younger person about getting involved, and how do they get into these circles? How do you get involved?
I've never called a CEO or a founder of a company that didn't take my call. Like mentioned Chick-fil-A or Dan Cathy. I met him. I had 12 stores. I met him at a conference. He had been to one. He said, next time you're in Atlanta, you got to stop down to corporate office. I said, I'm going to be in Atlanta next week, which I wasn't. I stopped in. We had lunch. He had like 1,000 employees. We ate in the cafeteria. He told his vice president, Woody Falk, he said, whatever Bruce needs, you give it to him. Tell him where he needs to be in Atlanta, the different stores. The CEO, David Novak of Pizza Hut, Taco Bell, and Kentucky Fried Chicken. I'll never forget, I wrote him a letter. He picked up the phone, called me. Dave Thomas from Wendy's, met him years ago. Yeah. When I had trouble, I was on my 8th store, and the franchisees were a pain in the butt. And I called Annie Ann's Pretzels because on Restaurant News, she had just opened her 400th store. So I called and I said, lady answered, I said, is there any way I could talk to Ann Byler? I have 8 ice cream stores, I'm franchising. And I said, yeah, 1 second, lady. So, can I help you? I said, yeah, is there any way I could, I told her who it was, talk to Ann. This is Annie Ann. What can I do? And I told her that I was
incredible.
New in franchising. She goes, you don't know nothing about franchising. You need to Management 2000. It was a place in Chicago. I went for a weekend, and they taught you about franchising and stuff like that. So, but no matter who I've called, they've answered.
I find that super interesting because one of my favorite things to do when I meet an entrepreneur or someone who owns a business, I always try to take them to lunch, and no one has ever told me no. It might have been like a couple weeks delayed, but they take me to lunch, and they have been so helpful. And I always ask them at the end, you have no idea how helpful this has been to me. And they always end by saying, you know what, when I was your age, when I was younger, I was starting out and I needed to learn things, I asked for help and people helped me, and I was never able to repay that favor. And this is my way of repaying that favor forward. So I do think there's something interesting about that, where entrepreneurs help entrepreneurs. It's super interesting.
When I was young in real estate in Beaver County, this is 52 years ago, there were only a few people buying and building apartment complexes. People just didn't want it. A lot of people didn't realize they could afford a home, because they never went to a bank and said, hey, this $10,000 home, what would my payment be? And it's like half what your rent would be. And so Bob Capo, he was a mentor of mine, and Saul Joseph, that owned everything in Beaver. Harold Brobeck, he owned the Volkswagen dealership, and he was always fighting the IRS. He wanted his return paid in silver dollars, which were like $22 a piece then. Yeah. And he taught me a lot about, federal income tax and things like that.
That's cool.
That's cool, man. You've had a lot of really good. Every name you mentioned, I know of, just through stories and or maybe business relations, something like that. Every name you mentioned, those are some of the top tier people in the area. And that's cool that you've been connected with them, and you're right there with all of them. Yep. You know that.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
Yeah. So, you've talked about different mentors and learning different things, but you didn't really have any mentors, it seems like, in the sort of ice cream business. But I mean, more so in the, your father. But I have to ask, what do you think it is about the Bruster's ice cream that makes it stand out?
I got to tell you, I don't eat ice cream, but I'll eat it like 4 or 5 times a year. And even every time I taste it, it's just amazing. Yeah. And what it is the process is we have the plant that makes it the old fashioned way. Then we make it in every location. So they make the mix and we make it in Italian gelato machines. And it's not frozen. And, my dad always said, you want to ruin a good steak, freeze it. You want to ruin the ice cream, take our ice cream, take it to your house, freeze it for a month. It's not the same stuff.
Right.
If you ate Ben and Jerry's ice cream when it was coming out of the machine, it's way better. I mean, they make good product, but it's way better at the factory. Mm-hmm. And plus the other thing that's kind of simple is people really don't like to come inside for ice cream. Even there's a competitor of ours, Grader's Ice Cream, which is a really good product in Ohio. And it's so funny, they build these big stores with seating, and people go in, they walk right outside and try to lean against a rail or something to eat their ice cream. They don't want to eat it inside. Wow.
No, you're in the right place.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure. I was looking for. I got a delivery from Staple Street.
Yeah, in the front. Yeah.
Okay, I apologize.
No problem.
No.
All good.
That is hilarious.
That's a first.
It's so funny. We love that. We love that kind of stuff. It makes for a great interview. Yeah. But this was fun this morning. Yeah. I know you've got a busy plate this morning, and no pun intended. We've had fun with this. What else do you have for this gentleman here?
Yeah, I mean, I think, Bruce, we appreciate you coming on. I think from your kind of life lessons here and all the different businesses you've started or been a part of, I think our listeners can learn a lot from it. But with that being said, there's always one question that I like to wrap up the episode with. And that question is, if you can give one word of advice to a young entrepreneur who wanted to start a business, what would that be?
Well, there's a few. One, before you get in the business, go work in the business. So if you want to start a steakhouse, don't start a steakhouse. Go work in 3 or 4 of them, and find out what you do like or what you don't like. Do something you love, because when you love doing it, it's not work. And then best advice I could give a person today, I think, is 2 things. One, if you think this world's great, you're right. If you think this world's screwed up, you're right. It's what you think. And the other is, when you ask a question, think about who's the right person to ask that question. Because so many people, like I tell the story of a girl has a baby and it's 3 months old and she's having a problem. She calls a girlfriend of hers that has a 5-month-old. No, call your grandmother that's raised 6 kids and 18 grandkids, and that's the right person to ask the right question. I know when they came in Beaver County with gas and oil, those Marcellus Shell. First person I called was Skip Homan, Michael Vick Corporation. Second was C.J. Betters. These guys have done that stuff. So you know what? They pick up the phone, they answer you, and it's no problem. So really, you can, like, a person will go buy a house and they'll call and go, "Hey, come look at my house." Nope, should have had me come look at it before you bought it. It's too late now. You got a
do
bad
anything
deal
tomorrow?
Yeah. No, they're read a book. I tell people, a person spends their lifetime and then writes a book, and you can learn all about it reading it in 6 or 7 hours. If you just learn one thing about each book and you read 50 a year, you're 50 times ahead of your friends. Sure.
What book do you think is one of the best books that a young entrepreneur could read?
2 I recommend. One is From Good to Great. It's an amazing book. They'd studied 1,500 companies, and only 10 went from good to great. And then another one is Accidental CEO. And that was David Novak that ran, like I said earlier, Taco Bell and Pizza Hut and Kentucky Fried. But before that, he went to Doritos. He was running Doritos, and he's the one that came up with, the different flavored Dorito chips. But there's a lot of great books out there. Another thing I did at early age, I got into motivational tapes. Success Motivation out of Waco, Texas. My insurance man from Swickley was really into them. And it just programs your mind to be, that was 51 years ago, and I still, luck is experience meeting opportunity. Stumbling blocks are stepping stones to the stars, just all the different motivational things.
Yeah.
It's hilarious.
You're not the first person to mention something like that. A lot of people we've talked to have talked about, like, I think the terms like manifestation, like, if you believe in your heart, your mind, that this is what I'm meant to do, this is what, it's going to be great, like, you find a way to get there. Mm-hmm. Whereas, like, the people have that more that negative attitude of like, oh, this is, I'm not sure, I'm on the fence or whatever, they usually don't succeed.
Right, and people want to start too big. Mm-hmm. Like, I know a guy in Atlanta from Italy, and he had $80,000, and he opened up this pizza shop, and it just killed it. I mean, just absolutely killed it. And then the next few he opened up, he spent maybe $2 million on each one. Keep spending the $80,000 per store, Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's funny the things you learn, like when you talk about the books and the takeaways and even like the books on tape. When I first started at Baker, my job was to drive a mail van between locations. And I'm like, working in that environment, you got to learn the company. Mm-hmm. In the mailroom area, you learn everything that's going on in the company, but we were tied to the corporate library. And I was in that mail van about 6 hours a day, and there were all these books on tape. I would listen for about 6 hours a day to these different cassettes. And and it was funny because, how the little sign-out system, for those kind of things with a library the old-fashioned way, it was me and maybe different CEOs at the time. We were the only ones that listened to those things. I'm not saying because I'm brilliant or anything like that. I'm saying I had time, and I'm like, man, instead of listening to the radio, there's so many things that you can take away from all of this. So it's life is a learning experience the whole way around. But yeah, it's cool.
I just watched a documentary on Amazon, Jeff Bezos, and it's incredible. It was this simple, and I never thought of it. Barnes & Noble can only hold so many books. Mm-hmm. You could have every book in the world on a computer. And he started out of a garage. Yeah. And, just start selling books. I mean, one thing led to another. Look at that company today.
Yeah. And the crazy thing about that, too, is I think I watched that same documentary, is the CEO of Barnes & Noble's, when Jeff Bezos reached out for help, he did not want to help him.
Yep.
And that's very different from what you kind of discussed with the other CEOs that you reached out to. And I think there's something to say about that, because if you look at the difference in the two companies now.
Well, looking back at food trucks, I'll tell you, I personally worked in a couple food trucks, and like, we'd run out of dishes, ice cream dishes, and I'd go ask another vendor that's selling ice cream, and they'd give me dishes. It wasn't like, your competitor. I'll tell you a funny story too about that. Canfield Fair, and I would take out the dumplings. Mm-hmm. And ice cream in the morning, fill the trailer up. And people are knocking, do you have coffee? Do you have coffee? And I said, no, you don't. So finally, one day I said, I'm going to get a Keurig machine. I love Dunkin' Donut coffee, and I'm just going to sell coffee. Within 2 days, I got a cease and desist letter. and I'm thinking, there's no way that they'll think it was the founder of the Bruster's Ice Cream in this trailer. So.
That's hilarious.
So Dunkin' over Starbucks guy?
Yeah, absolutely.
Nice. That's cool.
That's awesome. What else you got for this guy?
I mean, that's all I got. I mean, I could talk for hours. I think you're full of great advice. Interview. So, I know I want to be respectful of your time, but this has been great. Bruce, I think I'm excited for our listeners to hear your story here, because I think there's a lot that they can learn. And I think that a lot of entrepreneurs too have, want to start multiple businesses. And so kind of like the last question I like to ask here is, How do you manage that? So like, you're not just, from what we discussed here, you're not just managing, like one business that's successful and then other like side hustles. These are like all successful, well-operated businesses. How do you manage that? Like that's got to consume a lot of your time.
I think no, not at all. I don't spend 30 minutes a week, and I don't manage them. So that's, I think, where people mess up is they hire someone to run their business, and then they come in and try to change everything. I mean, I haven't been inside Jerry's, and or I stop at Bruster's and pick up ice cream when I'm going to a meeting or something, give it away. But and the same as this, haven't had an office here in 21 years. Just CEO's become my best friend, and we very seldom talk business. But he'll update me on something. But you have to leave him alone. We took over Focelli Pizza.
No way.
When times were tough back in 2008, and my CEO met with me, and he, we're not going to sell any stores this year, and blah, 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 but we're going to make more profit than the year before. And I thought, man, I got a hold of Focelli and the owner, Verrill, and I said, you don't need a salesman. I don't need a salesman. You have marketing. I got marketing. I got this. You got, So I think we can blend this together, and my CEO can run it. I said, but you have to be willing to walk out, let him run it. And we did a deal on a handshake, and we said, you can get rid of me within 60 days, and I get rid of you within 60 days, and after a year, we'll sign a contract. So we went in, my CEO went in and just killed it, man. He had 13 lawsuits. My CEO settled them all without an attorney. He had 14 company stores that worked well. My CEO's franchised them out. The first year, I looked at him and said, I don't need a contract. I don't need a contract. I mean, it'd be nuts to get rid of this. And after 2 years, he didn't feel like he was the man anymore. And he just says, I'm going to take the company back over. And I think he's gone through 3 or 4 CEOs since.
Wow.
But because you can't be here. If I stayed 3 days a week here, he'd leave. Right.
See that, and I think that's great advice, because I was just talking to Dylan, our producer, yesterday, the other day, about I have a hard time trusting people, in my own business. So how do you manage, how do you learn to trust people like that? Have you ever been burnt by someone?
I told my daughter this. My people do anything for me. Anything. Because I'll do anything for them. And I mean, when you have that type of relationship, but now in the beginning, you don't have that type of money, so it's a little bit tougher. But, when you're starting out, if you're the first one there and the last one to go, that's really important to employees. Not walk in and, go out the line. I know so many people that started their own electrical company, or electricians or carpenters, start their own business. The first thing, they hire 2 carpenters and they go golfing, and that doesn't give the employees a sense of pride that, he's working as hard as I am. And same thing with Jim. I mean, Jim is just 7 days a week. I told Jim, you can run this company in 30 hours. But 5:30 in the morning, he's on the computer. It could be Christmas Day. He's on the computer, returning things. Same with me. You can call me Christmas Day. I have a question.
Well, you must have treated people really well over the years. That's a big deal. One more question for you about the franchising. If somebody was interested in learning more about franchising through your organization, what should they do?
I mean, they can call me. I mean, so many people that I've run into, they're really good at making pizza, or they're really good at making chicken or food. Then they have a hot concept and they want to franchise it. You might as well get in the aviation business. It's a whole different business. And then I've talked with some, and they have 8 employees, and they're franchising, and you ask them how many of your employees were in franchising before. They say none. And they start too big. Yeah. They want to franchise, and they got to hire 4 or 5 people, and so they have to sell 30, 40 franchises to pay those people. So you sell to the wrong people. Where we were very lucky. Jim Fry, in fact, I'm having lunch with him today from the Italian Ovens. Very early on, he took me under his wing. And one of the keys to our success very early was we had our franchisees train our franchisees. So we didn't have opening crews.
Yeah.
Or we'd take a few employees from Bridgewater and a few employees from the nearest franchise and go open the next business. So we had 100 stores. I only had 5 people, in the company. So
That's cool.
That is cool.
Great story. I'm sure there's more to come, with as far as Brewster's, and it sounds like all these other little things that you're looking at as you go. It'd be cool to learn about at some point, and this is a whole different interview, about how you identify these different opportunities. You've got this wealth of knowledge just from years of experience and being connected to people and things like that. And I'm sure you got a lot of your own ideas, but it would be fun to learn how you identify and move into certain areas. That's a whole new beast.
yeah. Again, just loving what you do. Like, I'd love to open an Italian restaurant, but I'm not going to work it. So if I'm not going to work it, I'm not going to do it, because you got to do it in the beginning. But it's just things I like.
Yeah.
I make this homemade bread at home, and I bought a book on it, and it's fantastic. But I'm not going to start baking.
Yeah.
Not at this stage of my life.
That's cool. Your approach is really cool. When you said about inviting people into your home, having a dinner and things like that, I would say that is such small-time corporate America relationship. It's wonderful, because I think a lot of that gets lost in the shuffle of shareholder obligation, all these other things that happen. It's cool that you've stripped it down to basically relationships.
Well, when I was involved in the company, I would cook for the trainees. That then one night they'd be at my house, and that undercover boss got a hold of me, and they wanted me to.
No way.
So they came out to start filming. They said, "We can't do it because everybody knows you.
Yeah.
We couldn't cover you up."
What kind of meal, real quick? What kind of meal do you prep for people when you're in this mode?
I do a lot of pasta.
Oh,
My specialty right now is black truffle pasta. Do a lot of veal chops. I like veal chops, steak, homemade bread. But I haven't been cooking for them lately.
Yeah.
My CEO has.
That's cool. Very cool. Yeah. Well, we certainly appreciate the time this morning. Sure. Anything for us as we close out?
Nope. That's good.
Well, we appreciate it.
Yeah.
My pleasure.
Thank you very much, Bruce. We appreciate it.